Hello everyone. At this time, I want to present you my Unit 3 assessment, Popular Culture, Politics, and News Media. My name is Edgar Betancourt, and this is Humanities and Contemporary Popular Culture. First, I want to introduce to you Mr. Lewis Hamilton, Formula One racer. Lewis Hamilton speaks out about racism. Lewis Hamilton was born in Stevenage, England on January 7, 1985. British Formula One driver. He races for Mercedes-AMG Formula One team. He's a six-time world champion, second most all-time. He holds records in all-time most career points with 3,493, all-time most pole positions with 90, and most Grand Slams in a season with 3, also most points in a season with 413. He is considered by many to be the best of all time, or as the young generation would say, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. You can say he's probably the Tiger Woods of Formula One racing. He's the first and only black driver to race in the sport in the whole 70-year history of the sport. Now that I introduced you to Mr. Lewis Hamilton, here's a look at his Mercedes-Benz signature number 44 car. The article that I wanted to talk about is recently in the news. Lewis Hamilton has been criticizing Formula One for not helping bring in awareness or lacking leadership in the fight against racism. This article right here was taken from CNN in the United States, and it points out the lack of support that Mr. Hamilton is receiving in F1 racing, particularly the leadership in F1 racing. He also states that nothing was done and no effort is being made in helping him bring awareness to the injustices or the inequalities of black people, especially in the sport, but also around the world. Here's the article from the BBC, the United Kingdom. Similar title, Lewis Hamilton criticizes drivers in F1 for lack of anti-racism support at Hungarian GP. This one right here is coming from his home of the UK. This one right here is the BBC, United Kingdom. This article basically stresses the same amount of information that the CNN article stresses, except this one shows a little bit more support for Mr. Hamilton, it being that, you know, he's the hometown kid. The information presented is very in-depth. It also speaks on the particular leadership that is targeted, particularly being the president of the F1 association, which, you know, he stresses that he's not getting any support from, being the FIA president, Jean Todt. He's calling him out, stating that he needs to show more support and that he can't be the only one, you know, stressing the issues and having everybody come on board with the agenda of bringing awareness to equality in the sport and also just to black people in general. This one right here is for the New Indian Express in India. Lewis Hamilton criticizes F1 for lack of support and anti-racism movement. This article right here was pretty brief, a lot shorter than the other two articles. This one showed somewhat of a bias. This one didn't really pinpoint more of the emphasis that the first two articles had. The first two articles were speaking more on leadership, dropping names of people that Lewis Hamilton really stressed that needed to step up, like the president of the FIA, the Jean Todt. And also, it didn't really divulge too much information as far as the plan or what the motives of this movement, of what Mr. Hamilton is seeking to search out. It just basically presented information about the topic. It gave information about the current events that happened here in the United States with the George Floyd murder, and also just stressed the whole Black Lives Matter movement, but nothing too much into particular information about what Mr. Lewis Hamilton was stressing about leadership being on board and supporting him on his issues with racism in the sport in general. Right here is a picture that's posted on both the CNN website and the BBC website. It shows Mr. Hamilton taking a knee with his Black Lives Matter t-shirt. But as you can see in the background, it shows the other participants kind of feeling uncomfortable in participating. I mean, it almost seems like a mockery as the guy to the left, you know, although he has an End Racism t-shirt, kind of has a grin. Guys in the back are just nonchalantly, like, just not even paying attention, not even participating. And this is the lack of support that Mr. Lewis is speaking about, of not having in the sport that he's dominating right now. He's just the face of the sport right now. He's on top of the game, and he's the #1 racer in the world in as far as F1. The articles pretty much use the same kind of imagery, except the one from India did not use this one. So that's where I say that the bias, there's a little bit more bias, because it didn't show too much emphasis on racism. This one is a pretty powerful and pretty powerful image that shows what the topic of discussion is, and which is end racism, and you know, the very strong political movement of taking a knee by Mr. Lewis right there with his Black Lives Matter t-shirt. In summary, all three articles use the main quotes by Mr. Lewis Hamilton, stating that he didn't have support. The CNN and BBC use similar images, including Lewis kneeling. All authors' tones were neutral. I think they were playing it safe. It being a sensitive topic with the Black Lives Matter movement, the authors' tones were neutral. The New Indian Express article was short and did not put emphasis on providing details about changes that were proposed, and avoids mentioning the President John Todd. Seemed biased, maybe playing it safe, I'm not sure, but I just think it was just too short, didn't provide a lot of information. Spoke about the topic of inequality, but just didn't get the meat and potatoes like the CNN and BBC report had. My perception did not change reading the articles. Going into this project, I was aware by watching TV of Mr. Lewis Hamilton. He's a very popular pop culture icon right now. Young guy, 35-year-old on top of his sport. You know, he's, like I said, he's like the Tiger Woods of F1 racing. Always out and about with celebrities. He's been seen with Will Smith. He's been seen with Odell Beckham Jr. He's just been seen all over the globe with celebrities, going to the parties. A young guy, dresses the part, plays the part, looks the part. So my perception didn't change because I was well aware of the situation. And also personal experience with racism. Being a Puerto Rican here in Cleveland, Ohio, at a young age, I've experienced racism. So as far as, you know, my attitudes or my perceptions on racism didn't change, you know, due to personal experience. Here is a video with Mr. Lewis Hamilton speaking on racial diversity. This video was taken from YouTube link at the top. Video source by Sky Sports F1. He speaks basically on the points and topics that he's trying to bring awareness to in the articles mentioned earlier. Right here, little tidbit, is a picture of Mr. Nelson Mandela, and I just wanted to throw this in just as just a positive word, that no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Mr. Nelson Mandela. Wanted to close that out with that. Here are the references. I hope you enjoy. Once again, this is Edgar Betancourt. Thank you for listening.